Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, anywhere you are in the world. It is nice to be here again. Nice to be with you. I hope you all can listen to me. I'm here in the chat, so if you can't, just let me know. I think everything we should be good to go, and we should be live and talking. So it's nice to have you. Nice to be here with you once again at EA Live. So welcome. I am Pablo Gonzalez Day. Like every week, I am a Webflow developer here at Edgar Allan, and I'll be your host for today on today's EA Live. Like always, we are on Twitter, so you can follow us there at Edgar Allan Co., where you'll, find all the news about Edgar Allan, any updates, but also any news on upcoming streams. We do these every Thursday. So you can have that on your calendar. You can check us out on Twitter. You can figure it out in whichever way you prefer. And if you don't have time to watch it live, you can always watch them on demand on YouTube. So here on this same YouTube channel, you'll always find our videos to watch and rewatch if you are a fan. So today we will continue to talk about LetterRun. LetterRun is these sort of 3D clubhouse that we launched a couple months back, and it won an award at Webflow Conf. So we wanted to share all the great behind the curtains of how we work through this project, inviting featured guests, people that worked with us. Some people are internal from Edgar Allan, and we also collaborated with some people external to Edgar Allan. Last week, we talked with Casey. If you haven't checked that one out, we talked with Casey Catalbus. She was the person that composed the music for EA Live, for LetterRun, which is pretty cool. So if you haven't seen that episode, you can check it out too. And so we're gonna keep having this LetterRun EA Live streams in which we dive deep into each aspect. And today we are talking about 3D because if you haven't checked out LetterRun yet, LetterRun is a 3D space in which you can walk around. So we collaborated with Tino Zhabinskiy in building out this experience in a 3D environment and how we brought that into Webflow 2. So last week we talked about music. Today we're talking about 3D, and we have other chapters coming up in the coming weeks. So again, if you are here in YouTube, just subscribe to watch those upcoming videos too. And yeah, I guess that's sort of everything that we have for the intro. I'm going to say hi to Dale that's here in the chat. Hi to Felix. And we have Mason too. He'll be joining us shortly to chat with Tino about how the whole process to design this in 3D, how it started, where did the inspiration came from, and how did we start working through the process, going from the pencil sketch into the final production 3D files. So I'll just, won't delay this anymore, and I'll bring in Tino and Mason to the stream so we can just start talking about this. So let's see. Do we have Tino? Do we have
Hey
Mason?
everyone.
Hey, good morning. Or I should just say good day, because who knows where everyone is these days.
It's really tough to know where everyone is. So we just say, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. And some people watch it, in the future. So we will never know. So this is Mason and Tino Zhabinskiy. Thanks for joining us today, Tino.
Thank you for having me, guys. Yeah.
Of course.
Be happy to be here.
Yeah, and we'll be talking about a letter run and how did the whole 3D design process went, like from concept pencil sketching and then going into final production files. But first, Mason, do you want to introduce Tino? Tell us how you got to know him and how he got involved in this project.
Yeah, so I kind of had this crazy idea of trying to take our logo mark and maybe make something dynamic with it, and started looking around for different people to work with. Tried a couple different people on Fiverr, and then they sent me back these really crazy looking models. And Wit on our team was building some stuff, so we were really, at the time, this was about a year ago, we started with pencil sketches and got a really good designer internally or designer that we worked with, an illustrator, to be able to get some stuff down. But then went on to Dribble and started to just look around at different people. I sent Tino a note, and he wrote back immediately. And my headline was something along the lines of like, "Hello from EA." And I later found out that he was a little crushed because he thought that he was getting an email from Electric Arts. Or what
Electronic.
is it, Tino?
Electronic
Arts.
Arts.
Yeah. So he thought he was hitting the big time. And I was like, no, just little, design studio out of Atlanta. But that's really like where we met and, started hanging out.
Ben says hi, Tino, from the
chat.
Yeah,
we have
doing amazing
we have Wit
work,
here too,
by the way.
Looking good.
Yeah, I just want to call out, like, if you haven't checked out Ben's work, I don't know if you want to throw the throw your link in there in the chat there, Ben. But yeah, just like the 3D stuff that he's been doing. And Tino, I know you guys have worked together, right? You and Ben kind of like know each other.
Yeah. We worked for a year, and
Okay.
He's a really fantastic artist, and I'm glad that he joined today.
Yeah. All the stuff that he's been posting on Twitter, I think it was like 30 days of 3D objects or something along those lines. Every day it was just like, blown away. But I mean, Tino, your work is obviously amazing as well, so I don't mind complimenting Ben. But what was your thought when when I sent you the email?
Yeah, I was a bit disappointed at the time. I figured out it's not Electronic Arts, but things from there started to get really good. I felt in love with the project from the beginning, from the sketches, and I saw the potential to bring all these sketches into 3D. And I just love the idea that we can potentially create a like web-based game in 3D, and It's just sounded at the time like a fantasy movie or something like that. Yeah.
I don't want to
And
get ahead of myself, but then it became a horror story, I guess, right? Because then stuff got complicated at some point, and it was hard to figure some stuff out. But we'll talk about that.
oh, it was all hard to figure out. Tino, had you worked in Three.Js? I probably should have asked you that before we started working together.
Yeah, I have probably like a few small personal prototypes in Three.js, but from 3D standpoint, I knew a lot about optimizations for games,
Mhm.
and WebGL and Three.js is kind of the same thing because you have to like render 3D just in browser on any laptop or PC or even phone. So yeah, I had a lot of knowledge, but not like practice. I
Yeah.
I think so. Yeah, yeah, but things just turned out good in terms of optimization, performance, and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like,
Pablo, maybe we could go and show that original, like just the
Yeah.
going from just the logo mark into some of those original sketches, because that's really kind of where I think I sent you just something like this, Tino. And then I was like, hey, this little guy is gonna run around in this maze-like thing that's our logo, and
mhm.
had these sort of these letters kind of sketched out. Which I would say, if we did anything, I know we're going to talk about some of the challenges, but if we did anything really well, I would say that having the sketches felt like it gave a lot of direction because you were able to just like jump right in there. And I feel like on the first pass, I was like, oh my gosh, like this is it. It was like Christmas morning waking up and seeing, your Figma files.
So this was one of the initial sketches you shared with Tino, right? Right
Yeah,
here.
Yeah. Yep.
it is.
And yeah, this would work through building this initial 3D environment. Is that right?
Yeah, so this is one of the prototypes, and
Yeah.
Wit had kind of gone in and extruded one of the A's and started to add in, stairs and things along those lines. And within the project, and Tino in the background is at this time even jumping in on the modeling side, and we're
Mm.
kind of going back and forth within prototypes and models because at this point we didn't even know. Like my original idea was not to build a 3D 3JS project. I was just like, we'll do fake 3D. Like, there was what is it, Gathertown? I was kind of inspired by Gathertown. I was like, can we just
Mm.
have something like Gathertown, which is just flat and like, just little sprites running around and doing collision detection. And then Ben, who's the developer on this at the time, like he came back with not just like collision detection between sprites, but like this whole 3D thing. So he and Wit had kind of worked on this. And so I was like, well, I guess we're going to do a 3D project. So that's where this sort of came about. And yeah, it was Kendra has this great name for it. Fanta, she would have to say it, but it's a false horizon. And so this was definitely one of the false horizons because we are like, oh man, this is so easy. Like, we got this little pill guy to run around. And
Mm.
that's not how it worked out in the end.
And then you were mentioning Mason, that Tino eventually sort of got involved and made it a bit more profesh with his skills and
Yeah,
his
yeah. So
with
yeah, so
his
here we go.
sketches, right?
Yeah, so this is really like the first sketches that we got back from you, Tino, and it was cool to
Yeah,
just be able to see like. So I'd love for you to just talk about how you were thinking about stuff and what you were looking at this time.
sure. Yeah, just I firstly thought about like kind of a design side of things. So we have these walls around the letters, and we have this ground between the letters. And I wanted to make sure that how tall should be like walls, and how tall should be a character. Should it be like very stylized, cartoony, small in the big world, or it should be like kind of a human size or something like that. And at the same time, I try to establish camera angle and like perspective, field of view, and those things, so the player could see the whole room with every object in there. And yeah, so this
Yeah, I know
is kind
scale
of,
was one of these things around like how much room should we give to the character, and that type of thing. And at this point,
yeah,
we've got this is an example of just sort of a zoom in on this, and like a really early version of the character. We had two versions of the character. We had sort of this pill guy, and then we called this the tooth guy, or sort of the Donnie Darko guy. For anyone that knows the Donnie Darko movie. Um, but yeah, and then here's kind of looking at some 3/4 view.
yeah,
So this is, there's a lot of this sort of style that was out there about this time last year of, these cutoffs of rooms and things like that.
To me, it feels like The Sims, when you could just change the wall
Yeah.
height when you were building out your house, and you could see the 3/4 wall or the full wall and the ceilings, and all
yeah,
of that. And then we started experimenting, right, with like color and, like you were saying, lighting and textures in general.
yeah. Which is honestly jumped from the design side of things, like tinkering with the walls and stuff, to the point where we wanted to uh, give ourselves a break, probably, from the walls and stuff like that, and maybe see how the room would look like with the textures and basic lighting and
Yeah.
stuff like that. So Mason sent me a photo of Edgar Allan office in Atlanta, and I basically tried to replicate those materials that
Mm.
they have there, and yeah, and make the office room looks like a real office.
Which
Yeah,
for me, this file, when I saw this texture, it's like crazy, right? Seeing the complexity of, like, you see this final product, right? In a way, the just the room with the textures applied, but then you see what's
yeah,
the background of that situation. And so could you like talk a bit more about, like, how does this, how do you build the textures, and how does that impact your final
sure.
design, and with the perspectives and lighting and all of that?
Mhm. Yeah, sure. Image on the right though looks like a PlayStation One kind of thing. So, in its own way. Yeah, I just did a quick pass on texturing, do a whole lot of UV unwrapping. This is the process in 3D that you tell the 3D program how your textures should apply to the object. And so, yeah, those islands of color on the right, it's UV islands, yeah, with the color and stuff like that. So I tried to uh, photo bash some um, wood textures downloaded from just like Google Images, just to make sure that we have the proper like EVs, proper scale of the textures and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And yeah, and I created just try to replicate like what lighting in the office would look like with these lamps and stuff like that. And in this one, I kept the materials, but tried like different lighting approach.
Mm.
And as you can see on the couch, there is a little bit of like white glowing thing around the object, and that's the where we, I think, landed on some kind of a style of a game, this cartoony looking materials and stuff like that. And yeah, so it's still very early prototypes of how it might look like.
Yeah, and I would say that color, I mean, Tino, for me, it was one of these things that I really struggled with, even communicating to you and with you on like which direction. And you were, I would just like to point out, incredibly patient with me and everyone on the team, because we were really struggling with how to be able to find that right tone. And if you go back to the previous image, it was like it just it was so, and actually one before this, it was like I was so excited about that initial model where it was just like beautiful and kind of like crisp, and there was just like you could see everything, and then we started applying color, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is all wrong. It was, and it wasn't your fault, like you were trying to sort of explore this with us, but it was just, it wasn't hitting the tone. It was like someone had gone in and hit like the wrong side of the piano type of thing. um, and then yeah, and then even trying to go back and forth and figure out, so tried things in Figma is not really a great way to be able to express what colors you want where and things like that, and then you're going back and forth and it's really laborious. You're trying patterns, and it's not like, again, coming from the Webflow world where you're just like, oh well, we'll just tweak some stuff and we'll move some stuff around and we'll go back, and this was like, I don't know, trying to do backflips with cinder blocks on your feet. And then it's like you're trying to do backflips with cinder blocks on your feet, and I'm trying to tell you like which backflips to do from like the, being stuck in a trunk somewhere. So that's kind of how this process felt.
Mhm.
And yeah, like, and this is also a time where I was just like, I don't know. I don't know if this thing's going to come together. Like, I don't know what it's going to look like. And if you go back up a little bit more, and we're like, well, let's try some darker stuff. Oh yeah, this is where we're still really excited. And then we got sort of dark, and then yeah, and then Tino, I think you had the idea of taking almost like this Apple-like approach, and you stripped
Yeah,
everything out.
yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
Yes.
maybe talk about that.
Yeah, basically, there's no magic that uh, I just wanted to keep stuff simple, and at this point, probably we had this idea of like scavenger hunt thing, where we would like place some items in the rooms and stuff like that. So I thought like maybe we would focus on the character and the items, not on the like rooms, and we could keep them like just white or like black or whatever, just one solid color, and play with lights mostly. But that also doesn't didn't work well
we
because
we have this
for some
image here
reason,
with like a bit of color, right? Just a little
yeah,
bit of
Yeah.
color applied to it. And I mean, for me, it's, I don't know what you were looking for, Mason, but maybe I'm easy to please. But this, like everything I'm seeing here is beautiful. But you clearly had something on your mind that you wanted to go for, because like I would have stopped. Like honestly, even this sort of, I don't know, this for me super moody. I love this look, honestly. And I know it's probably not what you were going for, but everything just looks like super super neat on this
thank
one.
you,
And
thank
you
you.
just get experimenting the dark mode, which I'm a fan of. Just the white mode, I love this. Like it's so
Oh yeah.
just
Well, I,
essential,
and I think for oh, and I think for me, what happened here was this is really where you returned a corner. Where we stripped out all the color and just got to this idea of pops of color, and I was like, oh, now now I think we can see something. Because before this, it was like we were gonna have to pick out like what was on every single wall, what was the texture on every single wall, like what like all the, like, we didn't have a system that could scale across 10 different letters, because that one letter, that took a long time, and it was just like there was too many decisions. And so I think just probably Tino suffering through that and being like, okay, we need to have something a little simpler so that you can do it. Because we're also trying to, I mean, this is an internal project, we just can't like, we can't just spend time forever.
Yeah,
And so this was a turning point, and then the next slide is really where we get into like this is just like where it all came together. It just sort of like came into place. It still wasn't perfect, in terms of like the exact like colors and tint and things like this, but this was basically where we netted out. And at this point, we have the sort of crispness of the world, that Apple-like environment. Everything else has been stripped out. Those pops of color, and even for like the EA brand, it's very much kind of like a field of white with pops of color, and trying to have that reflected into this world. So yeah, this is definitely like, I think I jumped up and down when this came over.
Nice. Yeah, and this looks very much like the final product, which we will jump
Yep.
into a bit later on the stream. Tino, I know we're gonna talk a bit because this room feels empty now, so someone's missing there, right? It's a beautiful world, but no one's there to see
Yeah.
it, so we're missing our main character. But before we go there, I do want to ask a question we had from the chat. Dan was saying he's like really interested in 3D. He's not currently Dale, sorry, not Dan. He's not currently working on 3D, but at some point he wants to create some 3D elements for Webflow. And so Wit asked like if you could maybe mention some educational resources if you have something top of mind, and if not, we can drop them later into the YouTube comments. But just if you have anything top of mind, any educational resources for 3D for someone who's starting out.
Yeah, just if we're talking like on top of my mind, just generally YouTube. There's a lot of like content for beginners, and I don't have someone in particular, but there are literally like thousands of videos. I didn't take any like courses or something like that, so I can recommend like something specific. But yeah, f- uh, my recommendation, like personal one, is to start from really simple stuff like cubes and cylinders and stuff like that, just to make sure you have a grasp of like geometry modeling and stuff like that. And from that point, everything would be like easy for you.
And from a tools perspective, there's like so many tools coming in and out of the
Mhm.
space. I know like the latest one maybe was Spline, which was sort of new maybe a year or 2 years
Yeah.
ago. So what if someone is like decision paralysis, where should I start? And I always think that the tool is not the most important thing, but
Absolutely.
for someone to not get paralysis, what tool do you recommend to
I,
do that?
uh, I would say probably every web-based 3D editor is good enough to just see if it's your thing or not. But if you want to be like serious about modeling and stuff, probably Blender, because it's like free and open source and stuff like that. A lot of my friends, motion designers, work in Cinema 4D. Ben also works there, and he creates beautiful renders there. So it's not like uh, any tool like better than the other, just like personal preference. But I would start from Blender just for the sake of like price, because
Yeah.
it's free. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. Thanks for
Yeah.
that. Thanks for that. Yeah.
Yeah, a great question. Thank you.
Yeah, and I would say that from my perspective as someone that is very very new to 3D, so it's like I've opened Spline, I've never opened Blender, um, and just seeing within the team, like Wit's really been able to dig in on Blender, and really make some cool stuff, and not a whole lot of. I mean, I think and maybe Wit's got some superpowers there where he's like pretty good at picking up stuff. But like even at the beginning of the year, like one of the first things that we tweeted about as we were starting this project, and we built a lot of this project in public, which was also fun, and that's probably like a whole other stream of building in public. But like I just loved this like 3D cube that Wit had created, and also just like just wanted to call out for Jose, and I threw his link to Twitter on like what he's been building in Blender and kind of how he's been learning, and like even the start of our EA live stream here that was built by Jose, and he was just experimenting. So it's amazing to see how quickly that you can get going with some of this stuff. I would say the thing that I learned is that it is a deep, deep rabbit hole. If them to kind of explain this correctly, Tino, because every time I thought, I was like, oh, we've got that initial model. Oh, we've got color. Oh, it was like, it just got
Yeah.
more and more and more complex. I was like, oh, now we need to go. And like, we had a whole thing of baking, and we'll talk about that later, but baking colors and things along those lines. But I know we'll, talk about the next real challenge, which was like, okay, now we have the start of our environment, like this crazy character that we ended up netting out with.
Yeah.
Let's jump into the character then. Initially called the pill thing, right?
Yeah, that was our pill thing. It was great to prototype, and again, gave us this like, oh man, it's going to be so easy to make a character and have them running around. And that was not the case. And Tino here, he started experimenting with some different things. Here's the pill in the world. Also, as we talk about things like, we lived in this moon world for like ever. I just never thought we were going to get past the moon world, which was like super flat colors, basically black and white. It was like all of the sunshine and warmth that we just saw in the other world was like, it was sucked out. And just getting that to render in Three.Js, it was horrible. It was painful. But go to the next slide here. And this was just like a funny thing that we did, which we've downloaded a Ninja and like put this into the world to just see how the world would walk around. Still, you can see like how flat all the colors look. Everything is kind of sad. It's like sort of hopeful, but it's like been a little bit overbaked. It's like someone left the game in the back of the car window, and it all got like sun bleached. So
at the same time, though, as you can. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I'm going.
I just wanted to mention.
Yeah, go for it, Tino.
Sorry, we're streaming live. There we go.
Yeah, you're.
No, the previous one about the. Yeah. At the same time, though, while it's Moon World and we're just trying different characters and stuff like that, as you can see, we're almost finished with the modeling part of the letters. So you can see there, every object, every furniture piece, and stuff like that. And this is the marker that we finished all the modeling stuff and then started a new daunting phase of texturing, optimizing things, and stuff like that. Yeah. As Mason mentioned, there's a lot of layers to the to make things works in production environment, and but for me personally, it was the most like interesting part after the modeling, because we needed to figure out a lot of stuff, and that was great.
Yeah. Let's jump into the character for a little bit, and then we'll get into all of the baking and optimizing, which there was lots of back and forth there, Tino. Buying tools, experimenting with tools, all that sort of stuff. So there is some pencil sketches. We had the pill guy, and then we had the tooth guy, and then we spent a while in tooth and pill. I had an idea that I flipped over to Tino, which was like, hey, could we work with this? Could we go in and kind of take this character? And originally as well, I don't have it in here, but Eduardo or Ellen or whatever we want to call him, or they, we started with a bit more of a rounded shape. So they had little rounded feet, and they had a little bit more going on with them. And the feedback that I gave to Tino was this: it was like, it should be like an iPhone. I was like, and I was like, it's like an iPhone running around. I just remember doing that on the call. I don't know if you remember that, Tino.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And so, yeah, and then that kind of got us into this next world here, which was, this is sort of like that first rendering. So kind of going from that flat, EA, and then into our character. And at this point, like, the visual language just like came together. So,
I just love
talk about,
that it has like a face, because the EA
yeah,
logo, of course, it's not exactly like this. It has the E, upright, and
yep.
just turning it clockwise 90 degrees, you
Yeah,
have like the little eyes and face, and it's also like it's in a suit or something. It reminds me of the Minions in a way, right? It's either a Minion or a
yeah,
SpongeBob or something in the middle.
yeah.
So, I'm go for it, Tina.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that um, eventually the simple solution worked best, and this little guy really uh, was um determining all the uh, further style explorations and stuff like that, because it's like a simple yet enjoyable character, I would say. It's really really great idea.
And
Well,
then
and
we also have
this was called,
some friends for him, right?
yeah, and this was
Uh,
called out in the chat too, which was that sort of looks like the Among Us character, and that's true, because my kids were playing Among Us, and that was one of the things that even inspired this. And I tried to be like really careful to make sure like this isn't Among Us. This is like this is something totally different. But
I
yeah,
think
just
I
like
think
that letter
the fact that
form.
it's the logo, you're safe
Yeah,
because it's essentially
yeah.
your
It's our
logo
logo for sure.
precedes Among Us.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Um, But yeah, and then once we had that visual language, then we could just really start to expand on it. And yeah, like this is just super cute, right? So I have rabbits. Other people in the office have cats, and we thought like, who is Eduardo's friends? And this is just like where they started. We have other people that haven't made it into this presentation, where we actually started creating the personalities of different people at EA. So there's like a Florencia. There's like actually a Tino that has these headphones that Tino always wears. Also, look at those tails. Those tails are just like too
Yeah.
cute. And I'm talking with Waldo. So Wit had sent over to Waldo, who's doing the 3D prints of this stuff, and he is like we're actually kind of he's created some initial what is it, characters and 3D prints, and we've looked into like actually creating a board game. So we'll see if we do that. He's creating some all sorts of stuff. So yeah, we're gonna get some prints of the Letter Run bunnies as well as Letter Run cats. And for anyone that finishes Letter Run, you'll be able to receive a 3D printed version of Eduardo. So I'm hoping to be able to mail those out soon. So yeah, we've got a bunch of stuff that's going to be kind of sitting out as part of the scavenger hunt.
Yeah, and I think we always talk about letter run, but we don't mention the scavenger hand part of
Yeah.
it, which is like it's really fun to go into each letter, and I won't say what happens, but it's a game too. It's an experience,
Sure.
it's a game, and it's fun. And apparently, you might get a reward if you complete it.
Yeah,
That's just
and I think
exclusive.
there is someone that Wit knows that has played this probably more than anyone else, and has maybe found everything more than once, and as well ended up naming this. So Wit asked this person, hey, what should we name this? And this person said, well, Letter Run, of course. So That was kind of because we had gone back and forth on names and all sorts of stuff. We couldn't find a name for it. So if Whit wants to tell more detail, he can tell it in the comments here.
We have Jose. He joined. So nice to see you.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to get ahead of myself. The next slide, it's interesting because it's like, how do we move this character around, right? What are the physics of that? So I don't know, Tino, if you kind of want to talk around, like, how did you think about, because it has legs, so it kind of needs to walk around the space, and how did that process go?
Yeah, this is just a simple rig for the character for further animations and stuff like that. And the main, like the hardest part was to figure out how his legs should work, because it's not like it's almost humanoid kind of a character, but at the same time not. And yeah, I just tried a lot of like bone places and different approaches and stuff like that. So at the end, I landed at this yeah, at this thing, which
So I don't know, Pablo, if I can, I'd love to. I've got this in video. I know we didn't. I know we're live, stuff along those lines.
Yeah.
But if it's all right, I'd love to try to present. We'll see what works.
Yeah.
Right? So if it doesn't work, it's no big deal. So
no problem.
I'm just gonna.
Just share your screen. I think I'm gonna have it on the stage here, and maybe I can add it in.
Okay.
Just let me know when you're ready, and I can.
Yeah, I'm ready. So.
You have everything. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so, I'll add. Let's change screens. There we go.
Yeah.
So can you see this?
Yep.
Yeah, so this is Tino made this. The other thing that was fun is like going back and forth, and Tino would make these screen recordings and send them over to me. And again, like this one was super fun, and just being able to see it and trying to think about, like, you know, with some of the previous characters, there was a little bit more. We had the ability to kind of like, if I was to go back a little bit, there was a little bit more bounce with the character because he had these rounded legs. I don't know if I've got that. But with the square legs, we really struggled to get the feeling right and the motion right. But we ended up, over here, kind of exaggerating some of that motion. I think this is, Tino, something that you had brought up, like, this on the third rendition here, just like really adding that little bit of bounce and that little bit of pop. And so I don't know if you had anything else you wanted to talk about there.
Yeah, the goal was to make sure that the character at its size and at this camera angle, very like specific, almost isometric camera angle, that user can see that character is really like moving, almost like running, and that was the main reason that we have to exaggerate some of the animations. And yeah, and then probably it was you, Mason, who said that we should try like more of a jumpy moves, like bouncy run. And I loved the idea, tried it, and yeah.
I think that came about because the thing where we were stumbling is that Eduardo doesn't have arms, so like some of that that swing of motion you don't get within the run. And so the solution to that, sort of the solve for that, was more like, that little bit of bounce so that you felt that movement, and that it would start to come to life a little bit more.
Yeah.
So
definitely.
Yeah.
And also, I know Mason wanted Tino to kind of show some of his the file. Yeah.
I've got to figure
How
out how
does
to stop screen
Blender
sharing.
look like? You're good. You're good.
Oh,
You're
you took note.
already,
Okay.
yeah.
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 Don't worry about it. Tino, I know you have some files there, so I can share your screen now, and just show us around Blender. And I know Dale's
Mhm.
probably gonna like this demo too, so we can see how that looks like, the real thing.
Yeah. So this geometry is from the early prototype, as you can see by the pink background. So yeah, at this point, I just really prototyping the furniture and all the objects and PCs like chairs, lamps, all this kind of stuff, and Tooth Monster.
Yeah.
So yeah, I even did
I love that.
this thing. Yeah. So the idea was to be able to rotate later camera. So it, that was supposed to be like initial angle of view,
Mm,
and we plan to do this thing so you can rotate the camera and see the back of the letters. So
mm.
that's why it was important to create all the models, back of them and stuff like that. Um,
Do you use a curved monitor yourself?
Not really, no. But I just saw that like uh, it is more visual,
Yeah,
it's kind
Yeah.
of
it looks really
curved
cool.
like that. Yeah.
It's
So
like the
there's a
Bat
lot
Cave
of
over there.
details, like
Mm.
all those connections and stuff. Yeah.
And I would guess, just
Um,
curious to know, because I have never worked in 3D. There's probably, like with anything, lots of libraries, right, where you can access these sort of models, so you don't have to build each thing. Probably like
mhm,
there's like libraries from 3D monitors, 3D couches. So in
mhm.
a way, it's a bit like no code for 3D, right? Because where you're getting just some things, and then you're doing your edits on top of that. Uh, and
Yeah. You may use those as I would say, starting point, but definitely not like for the final product, because
Mm,
the final product should be stylized by the way you defined it. So
mm.
the all the objects should be like cohesive and stuff like
Yeah,
that. So the
but
only
it's
like,
great to just initially sketch, probably, and kind of get
yeah,
your initial.
sure,
Yeah.
sure. At this point, I didn't mind about the problems with the optimization. I believe there's a lot of, yeah, this is 168,000 of triangles, which is really a lot for this letter.
Mm.
So I yeah, optimized the hell out of it later. So it's just yeah, just a quick prototype just to make sure all the shapes there, and yeah, visual language is there, most importantly. Yeah.
Yeah. What
It's
did do you
the
remember like how many polygons we ended up with in the end
I think it was around like 100,000 for
for
all the
everything?
letters.
Yeah.
Yeah, for the whole world, something like that.
And well, we've got a
Maybe even.
couple. Yeah, I want to make sure
Yeah.
we were able to talk on the optimization a bit, and yeah, like just I know that it was like we got it all in there. It looked beautiful, and then we brought it into the browser, and then it looked horrible. And I know that you would bring it into Spline, kind of work with it in Spline, play with it there, and then really, I think and then there was like a whole month of just like baking colors. So talk with me about baking colors. I know there's an application you ended up finding.
Mhm.
What was that process like, and then where did you find efficiencies?
Yeah, the problem was that Um, it it was not so good performance with like materials exported straight from Blender. So we ended up using this thing called like baking textures. It is using in like old games and in new games, but for like low quality things, so that the um, like older PCs could run the game. So
Yeah.
I basically set up all the lighting and everything in Blender and just baked all those colors and lighting information and shadows and stuff like that into the textures, the those crazy UV islands that you've seen before. And yeah, and we ended up with 1K textures for each letter, and that really worked out pretty well. So we saved probably like I don't know. We started from getting like 10 FPS and moved it to one 140 on
Mm.
MacBook. So yeah, this is the
And
long way we did, and a lot of
and
saved frames for the users.
yeah, and for everyone, FPS frame rate, so the speed in which the experience
Yeah,
was rendering, we went from a very kind of laggy, slow type of rendering to you said 140. I would see 60, which is still really good, but I have an older Mac, so um, and the other thing that as you say baking, what you're really talking about, those JPEGs, so everything sort of exports out to a flat JPEG, is that correct? And then that JPEG sort of gets wrapped around a mesh.
yeah,
Am I
yeah,
explaining this correctly? So
exactly.
you had these crazy looking JPEGs, and it was like pulling those in different ways to be able to create that color, the look of color
Yeah,
on those JPEG, on the meshes. Um, and
yeah.
what's the tool you ended up finding? Because at first you were doing all this by hand, and I think you wanted to just like bang your head on the keyboard. What was the tool you ended up finding?
Yeah, the process that took so long, not the baking itself, but preparing models for the baking, because we had a lot of like rooms and furniture pieces and stuff like that, and I had to unwrap them
Mhm.
basically by hand, and it was really yeah, it was really hard. So Mason and I ended up with this cool tool called UV Pack Master, something like that, for
Mhm.
Blender that saved a lot of time in terms of placing on all those UV islands into one map, basically through AI stuff and this sort of thing. So only thing I had to do is just make those cuts on the models to show Blender where we should like unwrap those things, and then this tool does all the stuff
Mm.
that should be done. Yeah.
Yeah, I just remember the
Oh,
speed went from like one room almost a week, and I was like, oh my gosh, we're gonna be here forever. And you were like,
yeah.
I don't know if I can make it all the way through these 10 rooms. To really, I think you did the rest of them in a fraction of that time. So it was great for your mental health and also just for the project.
Absolutely. Yeah. If you have
um,
a project of that scale and you're struggling with UVs, definitely use some of those
yeah.
tools. Yeah.
And it was interesting because once we found the solution for one thing, we would often stub our toe in something else. And so in a later episode, what we can talk about is like it was great. All right, we baked all of the shadows in, and then later when we were trying to add physics, so we were able to add physics to the pool noodles and things along those lines. We were like, oh no, everything is all like one model. Like we couldn't just like extract the pool noodles. I think we had to, go in and like rebuild the pool and then bake color into the noodle, and then things along those lines. Because unfortunately, you showed me a prototype of like, oh, look what I'm doing with like throwing boxes around. I was like, oh my gosh, this will be so amazing if we could throw boxes around. But we'll get into that probably in another episode. Also, what's really cool is that Spline now has a lot of those physics baked into the, not baked in, but just like as part of the tool. So you can just go in and I think like add gravity and everything just goes, and then you can just like bump stuff around, which is like not what we were doing, because what we were doing is really creating all of that. There's no like game engine inside of Three.Js. It's just like Three.js. So yeah.
Yeah,
Cool.
and we're coming in close to the end of the stream. We have just 5 more minutes to go. I wanted to ask one. Well, we have Wit already responded, so beat me to it, Wit. But Jose was asking at what scale was it created, and let's confirm. Wit says 1.5 scale. I'm pretty sure. Is that right, Tino?
Developers use some number, but the whole 3D thing wasn't like wasn't tied to real world scale. So I just measured the approximate height of the character and built world basically around the height of the character. So it's like shelves pretty much the width of two characters, chair, the same thing. Yeah,
Okay.
something like that.
Yeah, awesome. Well, Tino, I believe those are all the questions in the chat, and as we come closer to the end, I wanted to ask, where can people find you if they want to work with you, see your work, or just chat? Like, where do we send people?
Yeah, I'm not sure how I can send it.
Just
But
let me know. It's your website is tino.works, right?
yeah, it's Tino that works, and I send it to our
Yeah,
chat and the
here,
station.
there we go.
Yeah, and there you can find my Twitter, my Dribble handle, my Behance, and stuff like that. Yeah, and
Everything
my
else.
email, and everything.
Awesome. Well, I don't know, Mason, if you have any sort of closing thoughts, any closing questions?
No, I just want to like really say thank you to everyone that's joined the stream, but also just really Tino. This was an adventure that we went on together, and there was lots of times where it was really hard and it was not fun. It was like, I think it was like a 8-month project, something along those lines. And there was just like lots of not fun parts of it, where we're just figuring out details, figuring out like even just like those nuances of color, like how the character would move, what is the character, all this stuff. And it was just wonderful to work with you. And I think if there is a reason why this project has turned out so well, it's all the people that have been involved with it. So it's great to be able to sit here with you today and celebrate, and really be able to talk about all the stuff we learned, because we definitely learned a whole lot.
Definitely. Thanks for having me again. It was nice to tell my part of the story. Yeah, it was a great experience and great project. Although, yeah, we worked on a game, and it was not always like fun, but yeah, eventually it turned out to be a great game. Yeah,
Yeah.
to be honest, I
Well, and
really
so for
enjoyed
my
doing. Yeah.
days climbing, there's an expression which is adventure is misery in retrospect. And so it was definitely an adventure. And I'm not saying this, it was not miserable to work with you. It was really wonderful to work with you. It was a lot of really hard stuff, and you're incredibly
Yeah,
patient as we worked on this
absolutely.
together.
Awesome. And, some people are just sending, claps and thanking you, Tino. It was a really good stream, very, very insightful. And just for anyone else that's here with us still on the stream, just know that, you can check out our other episodes on our YouTube channel, which you are right now. So you can, of course, subscribe if you want to check the upcoming ones. Next week, Mason, we'll be talking about, on Thursday, the 15th, we'll be talking about, I think, upcoming is pricing from a client's perspective, right? Is that?
Yeah, so I was kind of got this idea that came about on Twitter, which is BYOC, bring your own client. So anyone that wants to talk about their approaches to pricing, as I've invited, Matt from 80/20 and, a couple other people. I'd love to have a little bit of a roundtable. I think Dan Dawson from NCR is going to be able to try to join us. And yeah, talk about like fixed price retainers, like scoping projects, what it's like kind of receiving that, like all of that sort of stuff, like that whole back and forth, I think will be just really um, a, an insightful conversation, because a lot of times we talk about pricing in isolation. There's often like, it'll just be like, hey, should I do value-based pricing or whatever? And it kind of, I think it misses the point of like, there is a person, there's a client that's in the mix of all of this, and they're really the buyer. And so how can we meet the buyer where they are?
Absolutely. And that's the Twitter thread that started it all.
Yeah.
So yeah, we'll be trying to get that together for next week, next
Yep.
Thursday, like I said, Thursday the 15th, like every week.
Yep.
And then we have just one more stream before we go into our holiday break, and then we'll come back in January with more content. So yeah, thanks everyone for joining again. We have some messages there from Wit, Felix, Jose, Dale. So
Yeah.
again, it's great to have everyone here, have you join, and I guess that's about it. We'll see you
Awesome.
on the next one. Thanks, Tino. Thanks, Mason. Thanks
Yeah.
everyone for
Good to see you,
joining.
Tino. Yeah. Thank you, Pablo.
Likewise.